for those of you who don't know me, my name is Debbie Schwartz. I started the Road to College website and also the Paying for College 101 Facebook group. And, my goal is to try and educate people and help you through the whole process from the beginning of college admissions to the end of when your students start school, and so that you have a good idea of how the process works, and also how you're going to end up paying for it. So I'll just do 2 seconds about my background. I actually worked in financial services for a long time, and I got involved in this space because I was asked to do consulting work for a student lender, and the lender wanted to improve their marketing to students. And I said to them, why are you marketing to students? Why aren't you marketing to parents? Because parents, A, are ultimately making or paying for a majority of the college costs, and B, they help students, their own kids, through the process. They are an influential part of it, and they didn't want to take on that type of marketing. And I started to do it because I could see from my own personal experience of being a parent and having 3 kids, and seeing people in my community go through the process and seeing what information the schools were providing families. It just wasn't enough, and families weren't getting the information early enough. And then the other thing that I noticed is that there's 2 processes really going on. There's the process of understanding admissions and all the requirements that students need to build up, for admissions, whether academic, extracurricular, all that type of stuff. That's kind of, to me, like one track. And then the other track is understanding the financial process. And until recently, I saw a lot of professionals in this space kind of take one track or the other, and they weren't really blending the 2. And I personally believe that these 2 processes, the pure academic / admissions, and then the financial, need to be intertwined, because they ultimately both impact each other. And so you need to understand them at the same time. And they, some decisions that you and your student might make on the academic side are going to have financial implications. And some financial implications, are going to impact what schools your student may or may not be able to attend. So anyhow, that's kind of a little bit of a quick background on me and my philosophy and my goals. And tonight is about college merit aid. And I'm going to kind of do this presentation, which I've done a few times now. So I unfortunately know that it goes a little long, but I'll try and get through it faster. And what I'm trying to do is actually just explain to you what merit scholarships are, how the colleges use them, and then what information you can be looking at to figure out which colleges are offering merit scholarships, how much are they offering, and then to which students are they, giving their money out to. So it's all about, to me, I feel like these are all pieces of a puzzle that we're going to help put together for you. I'm kind of giving you some insights and instruction. Ultimately, you have to put your own puzzle together, but from this presentation tonight, hope you'll have a better understanding about how everything works, and what data to be looking at, and kind of what all the clues are that you can dig into and start to ask questions about. Okay, so let's switch. So lastly, I can see questions in the chat, so feel free to put questions there. I'll try and stop every once in a while and look at the questions and answer them, but also at the end, I'll kind of scroll through and see what questions that you have. And hopefully, I think, I've done this a few times, and I get a lot of questions from people. Hopefully, just going through the presentation will answer a lot of your questions. Okay, let me share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, hold on.
Can someone get me a charger? James
Okay.
already answered that.
Hold on one sec. Okay, let me just get the chat up. And one last thing. Okay, so just if somebody can do me a favor and just tell me if you can see my screen.
Yes.
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 Yes,
Okay.
we can.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so as I mentioned, tonight's all about college merit aid. I'm just going to stress that word college because the term merit aid or merit scholarship, I should say, is used a lot and can be confusing because private scholarships say, well, we are merit scholarships. There's the National Merit Scholarship, which is another form of merit scholarship. Those are all valid merit scholarships, but what we're talking tonight about is money that the colleges decide to give out. So another term that is generally used for this type of money is called institutional funds, because it's coming from, again, the college. So it's their money that they are deciding to give out. And I'm only stressing that because I'm going to talk a little bit more about, the fact that it's their money. And so that's a good understanding about how they can decide, what requirements they want to have in place in order to give out the money. Okay. So another actual way of thinking about merit aid, and this has been discussed a lot in the news recently, is some schools do use it as a form of a discount. They will say their sticker prices, I'll make up a number, 60,000, and then some schools, and we'll look at the numbers a little bit later, some schools give actually quote merit scholarship to all the students that they accept. So, and so is that, maybe they're giving different amounts to different students based on, different types of merit, but some, people would really, that's really a discount, right, off of the price of the school. Other schools are truly more selective in how they, give out their money. And so they're not giving a merit scholarship to everybody. They are only giving it to certain types of students. But, for the students who essentially get it, it's either, you can think about it as it truly is a reward for their accomplishments or achievements. But, in some cases, the colleges are using this tool, merit scholarship, as a way to pull in certain students that they want and attract families, honestly, to pay the tuition, but maybe give a discount to certain families. You're going to see that most of the time merit scholarship is awarded based on GPA. It used to be awarded a lot also on test scores. We'll talk about that but a lot of schools have gone test optional. There are other criteria that schools use to award the merit scholarship for talent, for leadership, and we'll talk about those types of scholarships. And as I mentioned before, some people, confuse merit scholarship with the national merit scholarships, which is a valid scholarship. It's just not the same type of merit scholarship that we're going to talk about tonight that colleges give out. Oops, sorry. Okay. I just like to share some important things to remember about merit scholarship / aid. The good part about merit scholarships versus need-based aid is that merit scholarships are generally offered for all 4 years that your student is in school. And so it's renewable, right? So whatever that scholarship is at the beginning of freshman year, they're likely going to get that each year that they're at school. But the important thing to remember is that with that renewable money comes usually some sort of a minimum requirement. It's usually a minimum GPA. It could not be an issue for your student. It might be a GPA requirement that's 3.0. Sometimes it is, though, higher. Sometimes it's 3.5. I just like to point this out because it's important that you know what that requirement is when you get to the point that your student's offered a merit scholarship. Because the worst situation would be that you and your student decided that they would go to a certain school, you realized that you could afford it only because they were receiving a merit scholarship, and then they lose their merit scholarship, sophomore year, junior year, and you're now at a school that is going to cost a lot more than you originally intended. So that's why it's really important to see those requirements and have a heart-to-heart conversation with your student or your child and say, are you comfortable? Are you going to be able to make this requirement every year so that we don't or you don't potentially lose the money. Another thing to think about, and this is another kind of discussion at a later point in the process, is that when you're looking at costs and you're hopefully estimating the 4-year costs of what it's going to take to send your student to school, that you understand that the merit scholarship is a flat number, but tuition is going to tend to increase. I'm going to say tend to. I actually, wrote this probably at the beginning of the pandemic, this presentation. So we're now seeing a lot of schools that are actually dropping their tuition. And so there might be some schools based on their, market position, based on their brand strength, they may continue to raise their tuition. There might be others that keep it flat, and that there might actually be a fair number that reduce their tuition this year. But just keep in mind that merit scholarships are flat, and so it might, from a cost standpoint, it would be, or from a forecasting standpoint, it would be conservative to just assume that tuition might increase, at least 2 to 3%. Okay, I'm going to go through. So the way I'm going through this presentation is going to tell you the different types of merit scholarships. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what they call enrollment management, which is how the schools decide on the requirements to give out their money. And then I'm going to show you a tool that we have that has a lot of the data to help you kind of quickly do research to find the colleges that can offer your student merit scholarships. So there are 3 types of merit scholarships. I'll just tell you briefly, the one I call automatic merit scholarships, kind of clear by what the name is, but I'll go in more detail. The other is a competitive merit scholarship, and the third is based on talent. So the first one, automatic merit scholarship, actually isn't that everybody automatically gets a merit scholarship. It's just that when your student applies, everybody who applies is being reviewed for a merit scholarship. So that's actually the distinction between automatic and competitive. A competitive merit scholarship is one where your student's going to have to do additional work, most likely fill out an application, potentially do another essay. For the automatic merit scholarships, again, everybody who sends in their application, the college is going to review their application and determine, does this student, meet our requirements for merit aid. Usually, the schools that offer automatic merit scholarships also share their information on their websites, and I'll show you an example. It's usually in some sort of a chart or a graph, and they're pretty explicit, and they'll say, if you meet this GPA level, you'll receive this type of money. If you have this combination of test scores and GPA, you'll receive, this other money. So that's, to me, in some ways, is like the best situation, meaning that you don't have to do any extra work. Your student doesn't have to do any extra work to get the possibility of getting merit money. It's pretty clear, right, what the requirements are for getting the merit money. It's the most transparent of the different scenarios that we're going to go through. Sometimes, again, I hate using these words, but unfortunately in this space, there is nothing that is a guarantee. But sometimes when you do the school's net price calculator, which hopefully some of you have already tried out on school websites, they include, if they are asking you in their net price calculators about your student's GPA, maybe they might still be asking about test scores, because I don't know if they've actually adjusted their net price calculators. Then usually they will be factoring in some sort of merit money if your student meets the criteria in that calculator. Use that calculator. It can't hurt to do the calculator. I wouldn't live and die by the number that they provide, but it should be, within a ballpark of what the school ultimately offers you. but they're not going to guarantee that they're going to offer you that. But if you do the net price calculator, I would save a copy of what you submit in the calculator and what the results are, just to have it and to see how the results actually come in at the end of the process. And it's just, some people do go back and say, hey, your net price calculator told me this, but the number that you're offering me is very different. And sometimes it works with the colleges. Okay, here's an example. Just wanted to show you an example off of a website of a chart that you might see about merit scholarship. This is from Miami University. And what I wanted to show you was on the right was last year's version of their chart. This was before they went test optional. They had different combinations of GPAs and SAT and ACT scores that they were offering money to. This past fall on the left is their chart, and they took out the test scores because they went test optional. But these levels or these breakouts are not like done willy-nilly. There's actually a lot of analysis done behind the scenes, a lot of modeling that the schools do to determine what those breaks should be, in this case of the GPA. So they're trying to attract certain students with these GPA levels, and for those students, they're willing to offer money. I actually had a parent reach out to me this morning, and it happened to have been for Miami University. And the reason why I'm going to bring this up is they felt that their students' GPA was different than what the school thought their students' GPA was, so that they were falling into this a lower level than where they thought that they should be. And it's something to keep in the back of your head. And this is an issue kind of across the board. And it's an issue I've started bringing up to colleges, that the way your high school calculates GPA, it may or may not be the same as the way the college is going to calculate the GPA. And in the world now of test optional, where GPA has become more important, it was always important, but now it's kind of like one of the only criteria that they're really using. It's important to know how that school, whichever schools your student is applying to, is calculating the GPA. A lot of schools definitely narrow it down to the 5 core subjects. Some schools, some colleges have their own weighting of how they, what weighting they might give to a AP class or an honors class. Some schools actually just take out the weighting altogether, and they just do it as an unweighted GPA. So there's a lot of variations. What's most important is to find out what that school is doing. So in the case of this parent who reached out to me, her student was just on the cusp. Her student was just below this highest level. And so, how that calculation is being done was kind of the difference between, quite honestly, like $6,000 or $7,000 a year by just a few percentage points of that GPA. So, she's going back to the school because she doesn't know how the college is calculating the GPA, and that's what she's going to appeal. But so it really has highlighted the importance of understanding the GPA calculation. Okay. Here's an example from Michigan State. Just wanted to show you that they are still kind of showing their traditional chart where the test scores on the vertical and the GPA on the horizontal, so you just kind of find where your point is, and that's the money that you'll get. They do make it known, I highlighted in red, you can still send in a score. I'm sorry, you can still send in an application that it is test optional. So they are not holding everybody to having a test. Actually, there are no schools this year except for the Florida State schools, pretty much, that actually are still requiring students to send in test scores. But and we have honestly yet to see if sending in a test score is really making a difference in both acceptances and the money that is given out. I think when this whole admission season is over, which is probably, the end of sometime in April, and maybe we'll get data together, by beginning of May, we might be able to see that even though schools said they were test optional, did they truly, if there were two students that had the same GPA and one student sent in a test score and the other did not, were they truly completely treated the same? We don't know yet. Hopefully we'll get a little glimpse into that. So let me look. So Angela's asking, does the GPA include 9th grade? Yes, it is 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. And that's, that's really most of what the GPA is based on, because your student is sending in their transcript and their grades in the beginning of 12th grade. They usually have to send in another transcript with the beginning of the fall, with fall grades, and sometimes another one that have fall and winter grades, but the GPA is 9th, 10th, 11th grade. So is GPA typically weighted or unweighted? Jennifer, that's there is no typical. So that's going to be high school dependent. Some high schools, a lot of high schools these days are weighting the GPA. And that's why a lot of the colleges recalculate and do their own calculations on GPA. But the thing to actually also look into is on a lot of the search websites. Most of them, I think, are using unweighted GPA. I know that I use unweighted GPA. That's the way we get the information. So if you don't see anything above a 4.0, it means that it's unweighted. But these are the questions you have to ask. How do I find out how a college calculates its GPA? Great question. Colleges don't necessarily put that on their website, and they maybe should start to put that on their website. Personally, I think this is a great question for your student to ask, and reach out to their admissions rep, or ask it, in a virtual, college presentation these days. It's a very valid, very useful information, and it's a great way for your student to, reach out and have an interaction with the college rep. And it's also information that he or she needs to know. So do colleges ignore grades from middle school classes for high school level courses, or are they counted in the average usually? And that's a good question. I guess it depends if it's put on the transcript, that the high school sends. So let me get back to you on that. Can't say that for sure. Rigor does count. I have a senior in IB, and it was definitely taken into account at most schools she applied to. Thank you, Rachel, for saying that. Absolutely. So I'm going to show you what they call as the common data set. I'm not going to go into detail on it, but as Rachel is saying, we're going to see the colleges actually show, and they tell everybody what is most important to them. And majority of colleges will say that the GPA and the rigor of the course load is most important to them, more important than the actual test score. Okay, let's see. Any other questions?
Colson, you're done.
Okay. So I missed it. Orly is asking, would you recommend asking for college admissions to reconsider giving funds if other schools have offered, even though you don't qualify for that specific college automatic aid? I would, Orly, but to tell you the truth, that's like a whole nother conversation and presentation about how you appeal the financial aid. And we've done 3 presentations on that. And actually we have another one scheduled in a few weeks. So I will send that link, or if you want to go to the YouTube channel, it's on there. And I would recommend you listen to that presentation, because we go through all of those different scenarios. Okay, we'll look for one more question, then I'll move on. Okay, the move to test optional began prior to COVID-19, a reassessment. Okay, can merit award go up if GPA increases senior year? Really good question. That's from Valerie. Yes, it can go up. And that's a good reason that if your child or student is improving or things have changed, you know, academically for them or achievement wise for them, maybe they earned some other honors at school, or their GPA did increase, or you know, maybe they decided to take the test, an ACT or an SAT test, and whatever school that they're applying to is interested in that information. Absolutely, I would send any new information about your student that may have happened since they submitted their application, and particularly even since they might have been accepted to a school. And I've absolutely seen schools give more money because a student's GPA has improved or something else has happened. So that's definitely a good possibility. Okay, moving on. So competitive merit aid, as I said earlier, this is really the case where your student potentially needs to send in a separate application, or they have to do a different essay. The reason why I bring this up, and it's important, well, obviously to know that there might be additional steps that they need to take, but in a lot of cases, the applications or the essays for these scholarships have different deadlines, which is so important to understand and to know those deadlines ahead of time. And I'll just give you one example. It's a pretty well-known one, and I use it in another slide. But University of Southern California, their deadline for merit scholarships is December 1st. Their deadline for applications is January 1st. So even if you're a student that meets all of their criteria for whatever the scholarships are, they will not consider your application for merit scholarships if it's sent after December 1st. So you will just lose out. So I would hate for students to be in that position where they could have received money, but they missed the deadline. So this just points to how important it is to start doing your research now, absolutely over the summer, and know all the deadlines and the dates that are important for your student. And, 3 categories of dates to understand: obviously the application deadline, any sort of merit scholarship deadline, if it's different than the application deadline, and this is another conversation, a financial aid deadline. Some schools, especially if you're applying early, have an early financial aid deadline. Okay. So just wanted to show you an example of competitive merit aid scholarships. And a lot of times this information is on school websites. So you have to kind of scour through the websites and find it. The example on the left was the USC example that shows that December 1st is the deadline for merit. Another school, this is BU on the right. This was just to show you that they have also some separate scholarships. In their case, even though that they are test optional, and again, a lot of schools are, they were just also sharing test scores or test score ranges, so that if you were a student that decided to take the test, that you had an idea of what type of students they generally award these scholarships to. Here's just more examples of schools. American University, which they actually have a separate application that you need to fill out to apply for their scholarships. Some schools will not show you what the additional requirements are for filling out like the scholarship paperwork until your student actually creates an account on the portal. So a lot of schools, they will share this information before your student applies. I also have seen some other schools that accept students, and then after they're accepted, they say, there are some other scholarship opportunities that now you can apply to. So that's good and bad. right? The good part is like, wow, there's other scholarships and scholarship money that you weren't aware of, and the school is letting you know. Sometimes, and I don't blame them, the students get a little burnt out, if they have to continue to do essays in January and February. Even though you can potentially reuse some of this stuff, they just get tired. And then the bad side is you would have liked to have known that information right before. So, and this goes to, I wanted to bring up, before I go there. Some college websites are very easy to navigate and the information is pretty clear. I would say a lot of them are not that easy to navigate, or they're just older style, or there's just a lot of information on there. And what I think I mentioned, I have 3 kids. My youngest is a high school senior, so I just went through the process again. We're not done, but went through it intensively this fall. And because it was COVID, even though I, had older kids that my own kids that I went through the process with, I probably spent more time this process with my youngest, spending time on college websites because we couldn't see schools in person. And it really struck me how some colleges were great, had beautiful websites, and not just beautiful, they were easy to navigate and the information was really clear and they had all the information we wanted. And other websites were just, just painful to go through because we couldn't find our information. It was hard to navigate. So I'm bringing this up, A, to maybe forewarn you, as you look at college websites, but B, if you can't find information, that you want, it could be related to merit scholarships. It could be related to anything. It could be related to a major your student is interested in. It could be related to policies of students transferring, something like that. Do not be afraid to ask the school. These are great questions for your student to be emailing with the college rep. I would go that route as much as possible to have your student ask these questions. If they're truly not getting answers, maybe you want to step in and help, or maybe even ask. And again, I had that as a personal situation with my own son. There was one school, I won't say which school it was, and he kept asking and asking this one particular question. We were not getting an answer to it. And finally, I picked up the phone myself as a parent and called the admissions office and said, hey, we're not getting this answer. Can you tell us what's going on? So, but don't be afraid to ask questions. And honestly, if you're not sure you're seeing merit scholarship opportunities on the school website, or it's not clear what the requirements are, or you don't know if there's a separate deadline, have your student ask. They can say, I just want to make sure that I understand all the possibilities, for scholarships at your college. Is this the website page where you have this, or is it any other information I should know about? That's just a good skill that they'll use in life in general to make sure that they're getting all the information that they need. But I wouldn't want anybody to be in the situation where you just didn't have all the information, and that's the reason why your student couldn't apply for a scholarship. Okay. Last one is talent-based merit scholarship. Of course, this is for students that have a talent in art, music, theater, anything where they might be asked to do an audition or send in a portfolio. Again, the thing to remember about these types of scholarships is most likely there are certain requirements that you have to send in. It could be and they're still doing auditions in the era of COVID. Everything is now, and we all know, done on Zoom. So there might be, again, different deadlines, and particularly there might be different appointments that need to be made because of auditions and interviews. Okay, let me take a break before I go on to this and see what questions we have. Oh, Donna's asking, could merit scholarships amount change based off of major? It actually definitely could. Although unfortunately though, we're not going to always know that information, but the colleges could absolutely be giving, you know, two students that look identical, but one student is majoring in, you know, I don't know, you know, math, and the other student is majoring in environmental studies, and one student gets more than the other because the college wants to attract the student where they want to have more of that type of student interested in that major. So absolutely, that's a possibility. You might not know it on the front end, but you know, I guess you'll see it on the back end when they offer the money. Another way that different majors might get different money is after your student is accepted, different departments also might have either internal scholarships and money that they can offer, or they just might have access to different scholarships that they know of, you know, private scholarships that they recommend students apply for if they're interested in that major. So it can definitely be different depending on the major. Realistically, how much do parents need to be involved in this process? Alicia, I mean, that's, I would say it's a little bit of a personal decision, but, you know, any final decision of a service or a product, I mean, this is my opinion, that is going to, oops, sorry, here's my dog, that is gonna cost more than $5,000, even more than $1,000, I'm getting involved as a parent. So that's just, you know, my decision. So you have to decide, you know, how much you want to be involved. I think these days parents are much more involved just because of the dollar stakes that that are at risk. Let's see, any other questions you have? Should you apply for financial aid just in case you apply but don't get a merit scholarship? Yes, you should be applying for financial aid, and I'll show you how to quickly determine whether or not you might be eligible for need-based aid. But most times, a lot of people are going to fill out the FAFSA, which most colleges use for need-based aid, and other schools like ask for a CSS profile, and just, you know, depending on what your EFC comes out to be, you may or may not decide to fill out the CSS profile. I think it's it can't hurt to apply for financial aid, but most people are going to want to fill out the FAFSA, not necessarily for financial aid, but because you want access, you want your student to have access to federal student loans. So the only way they're going to get the federal student loans is if your family fills out FAFSA. The only way you'll be eligible to even take out a Parent Plus loan, if that's what you want to do, is if you fill out a FAFSA. So that's the reason, that's the primary reason why most families should fill out FAFSA, is to get access to the federal loans. Okay, sorry guys, I'm just going to close my door for a second and I'll be right back. Okay. Okay, so Alicia's asking, is there much more merit aid available now versus 20 to 25 years ago? I guess yes, in that colleges really weren't giving out merit scholarships like they are these days, 20 to 25 years ago. You know, so the merit scholarships that are, quote, available, it does seem more. Maybe the colleges were doing something else with that money, but they just weren't using it to give out for merit scholarships. And along those lines, I'm going to show you a book. If you're really kind of interested in the history of merit scholarships and definitely more detail on the whole process of paying for college, there's a book that came out. It's now only about 3 weeks old. It's a great book. The author is Ron Lieber. Ron has spent a lot of time in the Paying for College 101 Facebook group. He's interacted with a lot of families. He's done tremendous research, but it's a really tremendous, really fabulous book to understand the process. And there's a whole chapter on the history of merit scholarships and how it got started, what schools started it, and kind of once it got rolling, it was like a domino effect. That's more and more schools had to offer merit scholarships, but I really highly recommend the book. Okay, so let me move on. Still lots of questions, but we'll get to it. And just want to try and get done kind of reasonably, although it's already 8:45, at least Eastern time. So next slide here. Sorry, here, title and author of the book. Yes, let me put it in the chat since I went through that pretty quickly. Hold on. Okay, so the name of the book is The Price You Pay for College, and the author is Ron Lieber. Okay, so the reason why I have this slide on enrollment management is I want to just give people a sense of what happens on the college side. I always think it's important, to understand both sides of a process. So at least you understand their mindset about what's going on. So we call, or, kind of the language we use, right? We think of people as admissions officers, deans of admissions. They're still called that. But a lot of them are also called, or a lot of the departments now are called enrollment management. And it's a subtle but different, terminology. And the reason why I bring it up is because, think about it. Admissions officers, we think that they're but they're, interacting with students. They're representing their school. They're reading applications. They absolutely do that. But ultimately, the admissions office, the dean of admissions, is responsible for enrollment management. They are responsible for bringing in, new students to the school. And if I were to make this equate this to a business function, enrollment management is kind of like the marketing department, right? They have to bring in a certain number of new customers, new students in this case. They have to hit revenue goals, right? They have to bring in a certain amount of tuition so that the school can continue to operate. And in the case of college admissions and enrollment management, they also have a fixed asset. They have, a certain number of dorms. So it's actually a lot of moving parts here, and it's very much a business function. It's not just like an academic function of, we're going to evaluate students and see if they're the right students for our school. It's a function of making sure that they're bringing in enough money for that the school can operate. I explain all this because there are a lot of companies behind the scenes working with colleges to make sure that all of their goals are met. And two of the biggest firms are Ruffalo Noel Levitz and EAB. And these companies, and again, you will, if you read this book or get this book, they talk a lot about these companies. They are using sophisticated models these days, data models. They are pulling in information about your student. They are pulling in information about your family. They are looking at the interaction that your student has with marketing material that goes out, with the website, and all of this information is, being pulled together and churned through, the algorithms that they're creating, which then ultimately kind of spit out and say, for your type of student and your family and where you might be located and the interaction your student has had with us, this is the level of merit scholarship we want to offer you, because the merit scholarship is kind of represents how much that school wants your student. So I just tell you all this because, these numbers are not willy-nilly that the schools are giving out in terms of merit scholarships. There's a lot of sophistication behind it. Okay. So I'm switching gears. We're going to talk about the tactics of how you can find merit scholarships. On a really high level, I like to tell people that it's really important that you take control of the process. And when I say take control of the process, it means that you gather as much information as you can about what's going on, about understanding the process, and then about data that you can look at, which we're going to go through. But basically, I believe that there's an imbalance of information, right, between what we have as parents and families and what the colleges have. We're kind of scrambling for information, yet the colleges, can purchase all this information about your student. They can purchase information about you. They get all this information about your finances from FAFSA. So it's like, they're reveling in, an ocean of data about the process, and we have very little on our end. But that's changing as more and more parents are kind of demanding more information and demanding answers to questions. Okay, so I'm just answering. I see a quick question. How are the schools monitoring the interaction with snail mail that they send out? We get so many from colleges. I usually toss it out. How can I express my interest to them via advertisements targeted to us? So if you looked more carefully at the direct mail that colleges send, there is usually some action that they want your student to take. There's usually a specific URL at the back of the postcard or the back of the pamphlet, and for students who go to that URL, that's the way the college knows that you've gotten the direct mail piece and that you're interested. So believe me, probably everything that a college sends out these days from a marketing standpoint has some tracking capability, whether it's a physical direct mail piece, whether it's a text that they're sending to your student, whether it's an email that they're sending to you or your student, because now they're doing more marketing to parents. And you might even notice that you're being targeted with Facebook advertising related to specific colleges as well. Okay, one more question before we go on. Please answer, are early decision and early admission applicants awarded more merit money? No, they are not awarded more. In fact, they're probably awarded less, particularly early decision applicants. So just think of it again from a business standpoint. If your student decides to apply particularly early decision to a college, they are saying, hi, I'm very interested. I am so interested in your school that if you accept me, I'm going. Like, I'm giving you a guarantee that I'm going. So if I'm the school and I only have a certain budget of what I can give out for merit scholarships, I'm most likely not going to give the student who's very eager and says, I want to come no matter what. I may not spend money to give them a merit scholarship because I'd rather save that money and use it for another student who I'm going to have to lure, later in the process. So, I can't say that I have statistical information behind this. I'm working on that. I'd love to get some more information with actual data. But what I've also anecdotally seen is that students that apply early decision, they still might get merit scholarship money, but it may not be as high or as much as if they applied later in the process. Early action applicants, I've seen kind of all across the board, and I'm going to tend to say that I've seen that they get just as much merit money as if they were going to apply early. I'm sorry, early action students get just as much merit money as if they were going to apply regular decisions. Sometimes I've actually seen them get a little bit more. And the reason is that if a student is applying early action and a college accepts them, a college just sometimes wants to get it done. They want that student to just accept and get it over with. And so they might actually give the early action student a little bit more money to maybe make that student just come and say, I'm done with the process. I'm going to select this school. And so that's a possibility of why they might get a little bit more. So Daniel's saying many early decision, early action schools give out very little merit aid. I would definitely agree with the early decision schools. A lot of early decision schools give out very little merit money, but there are a fair number of early action schools that are still giving out money. Okay. Let's go back to the slides. So how do you take control of the process, right? We've kind of already talked, we've started talking about it. One is learn the process, which you're getting a sense of what that is. Another is understand the timelines. I kind of talked about that with regards to deadlines. So there's, essay deadlines, there's, the scholarship deadlines, financial aid deadlines. The deadlines are important. You miss a deadline, sometimes the school is not lenient. They don't necessarily, depending on the school, they don't have to be lenient. They got other students that made the deadline. So that's probably the hardest part for students to deal with. Somebody asked earlier, how much do parents need to be involved? That is probably the best place, among other places, but for the parents to make sure that the students understand what the deadlines are, they understand what they need to do, potentially like months in advance to make that deadline. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Hopefully you'll be getting together like a list of good questions that you might want to use to ask every school to start to evaluate the schools, and become familiar with the terminology, which I think you just naturally will. Some people are already abbreviating ED, early decision, EA, early action, FAFSA, EFC. There's a lot of acronyms in this process. So I'm going to show you a tool that I put together. I'll tell you why I put it together, what's in it, and the purpose. I call it College Insights. The purpose was to really make this tactical process of finding the colleges that can give your student merit scholarships faster and easier. So again, it's College Insights is the name of it. The URL is down here, collegeinsights.roadtocollege.com. We have a sponsor that is giving away the first month for free. So if you use the code first month free, you'll be able to use it for the full month. I just realized the sponsor is, who's sponsoring the whole presentation as well, is College Ave Student Loans. I've been working with them for about 3 years. They are a really solid company. If your student needs student loans, private student loans. And that's a whole nother discussion. And it's something you'll figure out later on in the process. But if your student needs private student loans, I highly recommend that they check out College Ave. College Ave, helps students with their loans to take the stress out of paying for college. They've created a student loan, which is actually very flexible, and it's really meant so that you can add different features to it so that the loan fits your budget and fits your goals. So you can choose different payment patterns, length of term for the loan. And I'll tell you my last thing, the other reason why I really partner with College Ave is because they are strongly interested in support educating families on the whole process. So they don't want people to go into this blind either. They don't want people to go into the admissions process without the information they need, and they don't want people to go into the student loan research, the process, which is kind of happens at the end. That's a whole nother phase of this process, and you need to be educated about student loans and about what you're looking for and what's going to be best for you. And College Ave is very, very committed to helping parents be educated about that process. So thank you, College Ave. And if anybody wants to, I'm going to flip my screen and go share the actual tool. If you want to try it along with me, feel free to go to the URL, collegeinsights.roadtocollege.com. I will say one little caveat. I apologize that if you go to collegeinsights.roadtocollege.com and you put in the code, you still have to put in your credit card. It's just the way that our setup works right now. You truly will not be charged for the first month. You'll immediately see that in the invoice that you get. Okay. Let me just give you 2 minutes about College Insights before we flip over and look at it. So the reason why I created College Insights is that when I got involved in this space, I saw that there were a lot of data on colleges, right? But it was all in different places. So the government collects information about colleges, very useful information. It's a source called IPEDS, IPEDS, and they have a consumer-facing website. Maybe some of you have been on it. It's called College Navigator. It's definitely worth checking out. The data from the government is free. Anybody can access it. You just have to decide if you want to, download data sets and manipulate them, but it is free. The government, collects probably 300, I'm going to say 300 to 500 different types of variables on colleges. So, if that's your thing, you should go check out IPEDS. I use some IPEDS information, and then I combine it with another source of information, which is called the Common Data Set. I'm actually not going to pull up. I sometimes pull up a common data set to show you. It's probably going to take a little bit too much time tonight, but I'm curious if anybody knows what the common data set is. If you just put that in the chat. I would think, I don't even know how many people are here tonight, but of all the people who are here, yes, a fair number do. Great. So the common data set is the information that a lot of the rankings are based on. US News and World Report uses it for their rankings, whether we, like or dislike those rankings. So there's a consortium of 3 companies that actually, gather all this information. It's the College Board, Peterson's, which is a private company, and US News and World Report. They have asked colleges to fill out these forms, and it's as the title says, it is a common format of information that the colleges fill out, and that's why they call it the common data set. If you were to look at a common data set from multiple schools, the format is all the same. So if you want to see a particular college common data set, you should just Google, the name of the colleges. I'll just give you an example, like just because I'm in the Philadelphia area, I'll say Drexel. If you Google Drexel common data set, it will very quickly bring you to the web page, the page on the college's website with not just this year's common data set, but probably the last 10 years of common data set. And there's different sections of the common data set. I use a lot of information from it's called Section H, which is all the financial information. I think it might be Section C or B, it's kind of high up, which has the information related to what admissions looks for. So I would absolutely pull up a common data set and look through it. It's a ton of information. It's kind of interesting. The thing that's hard is that you have to Google each school to find their common data set. There are some websites that compile it, but not that many websites that make it easy to search all the schools' common data sets. So what I did is I took government data, which is IPEDS. I took pieces of the common data set, which I thought were worthwhile for people to look at. We have some other data that we scraped from different sources. And then the fourth piece of information that we have is crowdsourced information. So for the past, this is now our 3rd year, we've asked families, particularly families in the Paying for College 101 Facebook group and families that are on the on the Road to College email list, to share their actual offers. So everything that I'm telling you is the government data, the common data set information is information that colleges report out, right? So we kind of have to trust them. We have to say, okay, this college is telling me the truth because this is what they put in the report. Hopefully they're telling the truth. Sometimes there have absolutely been cases where they've purposely didn't give us the correct numbers. And sometimes they were just pure mistakes. So we've actually crowdsourced real college offers from students, and that is also included in College Insights. I'll show you. So you're able to look at, actually right now, this season, what students are being, what their offers are, because people have been entering it in, and then you can also look at last year's offers as well. Okay, I'm going to switch. Let me see if I've got anything else here. This is everything that I went through. Okay, let me switch and pull up College Insights. Okay, so can everybody see college? Just if somebody can just write in the chat that they can see my screen and you're looking at College Insights. Okay, yes, thank you. Oops, sorry, one more thing. Okay, so if you go to collegeinsights.roadtocollege.com, this is exactly what you will see. Actually, it may not pull in all of the colleges right away, but this is what it looks like before you might have signed up. So there are 2 ways that you can test this out. I mentioned College Ave Student Loans is sponsoring that. Anybody who wants to use the code FIRST, and I'll put it in here, first month free, will get just that, the first month free. So that's one way of testing it out. If you don't want to, use the discount code, you will get 3 free searches. So you can, search away. I'll show you the different ways to search. So you will be able to get like a taste of what we have in here. Okay. So I need to sign in myself. And I'm going to walk you through how you do a search, the different information that's included here. And I mean, personally, how I use this tool for myself, for students that I work with, and for people who ask me questions. Okay, so on the left-hand side, there's 2 ways that you can search. The top, you can put in a specific school. I'll just, anybody want to, I'll just pick my Drexel, which I always use a lot. I'll pick Villanova. I'm sorry, guys, I'm just using all of the colleges that are right around me. We'll do St. Joe's. Okay, so anyhow, as you can see, you can put in any number of specific schools that you want. You can do a search, and then it will give you the information just for those schools that you put in. Pretty simple, right? The second way you can do a search is by putting in certain preferences. This is purposely, we only have a few number of preferences here. This is not an exhaustive list. You might go to other search sites and they'll, have a ton of questions. They're probably kind of want to get a sense of, what the social scene is that your student wants, or, what the college town is like and what the food is like at the school. Those are all important things, but we didn't focus on that here because that's not the purpose of why we created this. The purpose was really more financial. It was to very quickly give you the colleges where your students likely to get merit money. That is the primary reason for this tool. It also helps, if you're looking for need-based aid, it's kind of zone you in on the schools where you're most likely to get need-based aid. So because of that, we're only asking a few filtering questions. And again, my philosophy of if you're a family who's looking for schools with merit scholarships is you should actually cast your net on the wide side at first. You want to see all the possibilities out there. Because if you narrow things down too quickly, you will miss a school you never knew anything about, you never even knew the name of it, and you never knew that it gave out merit scholarships. There may very well be schools on the list that you know nothing about, but that's the opportunity to kind of dig in and say, let me find out more, because I didn't know anything about it, but it's a school that my student definitely has the potential to get into, and they're giving us money, and it falls into our budget, maybe I should know more about it. So the criteria that we really let you search by or filter is by major. So if there was a particular major, of course, that, that's important. Particularly if your student is, going for like engineering, not all schools have engineering. So let's just use that as an example. Let's just pick the like general engineering. Where is that? Oh, here. From a location standpoint, you can pick by regions. These regions are the regions that the government uses to cluster colleges together. And you can also pick by specific states. So I'm just going to use, for this example, I'm just going to say, hey, we want to look at all the schools in New England, and maybe they also want to go warmer southeast, and they're interested in certain states like California, and maybe I'm just making it up, Illinois. So you can pick regions, you can pick states, and for locations. School size, again, there's the whole gamut. I wouldn't narrow down the size too much, other than if you absolutely know your student, maybe does want to go to school on the larger side or doesn't want to go to school on the larger side. So, there's schools, 10,000, 30,000 kids, depending on some of the big state schools. But you might know that your student, probably doesn't want to go to a school that's larger than 10,000. This is your personal and their personal preference. So you could, narrow things down for size. So then here we get to test scores. And so you're probably thinking, so many schools have gone test optional. Why are we still using test scores, right? And I'm going to tell you why. There's some good reasons and maybe some not so great reasons. One is a lot of this, actually all the data that I'm going to show you, and all the data that is available is based on last year's admission season, right? I mean, we don't have the data from this year's admission season yet. It's not over. So the only thing we can use to figure out, where we want to, or, how we want to search is we can only use, last year's data and sometimes like the year before. So last year, colleges were not test optional. So a lot of them, share their test information. And for whatever reason, if you had to look at information that the schools collect and share about test scores versus GPAs, they do a much better job, or they did in the past, a much better job of collecting information around test scores and breaking it out into different percentiles and sharing that information. When we look at GPAs, they don't do as good of a job collecting the information or sharing it out or breaking it out into just different percentiles. And maybe that's because of what we talked about earlier, that there's so many different ways to calculate GPA. Maybe that's the reason why. Maybe it just wasn't as high a priority in the past because people were a little bit more focused on test scores. So, and again, I'm going to show you in the tool, we just don't have as much rich data related to GPAs as we do for test scores. That, isn't the greatest of answers, but if you're searching and you're using data, I mean, we're going to go with what we have the most of, that's the most accurate. So you might be saying, well, my kid, A, didn't take a test, and B, maybe never is going to take a test. So how can I use this tool? Well, two ways. You can choose not to even filter by any test score. That's fine. I'll show you. I mean, we'll run a search and we won't even use a test score, and you can still use the information. But if you want to use the test score and your student didn't take a test, I have two resources, and I'm going to switch quickly. There are charts, there are conversion charts that give you a range that say, if your student has this GPA, and they're being specific, they're saying a 4.0, which is an unweighted scale. If your student has this GPA, it's likely that they're going to score, this type of a score on the ACT. And I would actually kind of take like, plus or minus like 2 or 3 in each direction. And then we have the same thing for the SAT. So I will send you these links in the follow-up email, but there are basically conversion tables that can kind of take a student's GPA and say, this is the potential SAT or ACT that they might get. And you can use that here, or you can choose to not use it at all. If you do use a test score, then you can actually search by the average range, which is a range where if your student's test score fits into that average range, it's very likely that they'll be accepted. Or you can search by what we call the top range, or where students are in the 75th percentile or the top 25th percentile. And that's really obviously the kids that are at the higher end of the academic range that school is interested in. And those students at that high end are the students that are going to receive merit scholarship. That's why we broke it out. You can definitely look at the average. You're less likely that your student is going to get merit scholarship money at that school. But if your student is at the top range of that school, you have a much better chance of them getting merit scholarship. Okay. So I'm going to just leave this search in, which was for engineering in these states. I didn't even put in a school size, and I'm not going to, how about this? I'm not going to put in a test score. So we're just going to search and see what happens. So this is telling me for those criteria that I put in, there's 114 schools that match that criteria. Then we have these like pre-filtered tabs on top to just make it easier. Of the 114, 89 of them are test optional. 109 of the schools give out some form of merit scholarships. 112 give out need-based aid. 22 of those schools are early decision. 20 of them are early action. And the favorites are just the schools that I've put a heart, and if you use this, you can kind of put a heart on and save them for later. I'm going to quickly go through some of the more important pieces of information here. So this is a few things I want to say. This is the first version of this tool. We've gotten great suggestions from people as they've used it. If you have a suggestion, please send it to me. I'd love to know about it. We may not be able to implement it immediately, but we're working on a new version or an updated version that will probably come out over the summer. So send me any suggestions you have. I love it. The second thing is that for this first version, we wanted people to really be able to compare all the schools. So that's why this is the way it's set up. You can really quickly scan a column. You can sort a column, ascending or descending. So this was really meant to do some very quick comparisons, some sorting and some filtering, which is not what a lot of the other websites let you do. And then there's always the question, good question, like, when is this data updated? So a lot of this data does not change during the year, right? The percentage of how many percentage of women versus men at a school, that's not changing, week to week, month to month at that school. It might be changing year to year. So most of this information is updated once a year, and that information is usually updated in the summertime, in the July timeframe. And I'm just giving you guys all the information I know about the timing of the data. Right now, colleges are just finishing up pulling together all of their common data set information for this year's common data set. So that's not even out there. Some schools might have it out there on their website. Some schools, if you go, they might have the 2020 to 2021 common data set. That would be the most recent. That's great. But for the majority, that's not all out there together. And then we don't get that compiled information until usually the June timeframe. The other thing is that we wait for is the colleges to update their tuition information. They don't usually update their tuition information again until the summertime, usually June. So this information does get updated, but it won't be until June. But that whatever is in here now is still extremely valid to use for your searching purposes. I will even argue that some of the information is more valid this year than it's going to be next year. And I'll tell you why. So people have started to make this observation, which I think is a very valid observation, that if people are going to use like test scores as any sort of referencing, that the test score information that we're going to get next year is probably going to be skewed higher than this year, because of all the because of all the schools that have gone test optional. If students have sent in test scores, it's most likely the students who feel good about their test score or felt that their test score is on the better end of what the school wants. So most of those test scores are going to be higher than they probably are this year. So from a searching standpoint, you might want to actually look at this year's test range, because it might be more truly representative of the types of students that are being accepted. The second thing is about this whole GPA situation. I hope we get better information. I have actually, may have made comments to some schools. I've actually made comments to Peterson's, which is one of the companies that collects a lot of this information, about getting better information about GPA. They are working on it. So, you know, hopefully, I cross my fingers we will, but we won't know until we get all the data together. Okay, so let me walk through some of this information really quickly. I mean, some of it basic, state, region. I'm not going to go over that, obviously. Number of undergrads, the percentage of the class that it's male versus female, student faculty ratio, you know, is telling you how large, or, you know, the classroom sizes might be. I'll just point out some of the important ones. Sophomore retention numbers are important to look at. You know, it's an indicator of how many of those freshmen are returning for sophomore year. Actually, a lot of people don't think to look at that information, but a lot of parents have been interested in it, and I think they're smart if they're interested in it, because you obviously don't want to send your student to a school where, for a lot of different reasons, you know, kids start there and they all of a sudden realize they don't like it and they don't continue. So that's important to look at. 4-year graduation rate. I'm going to actually spend just like 2 minutes on that. So you kind of wonder, like, why, like what's so important? Well, we know what's important about the 4-year graduation rate, but why is it like so unusual that we should have it? So the government only requires colleges to calculate and share a 6-year graduation rate. When you look on college websites, you should be careful when they say a graduation rate. If they are sharing their 6-year graduation rate with you, or are they sharing the 4-year graduation rate? Legally, they only have to share the 6-year graduation rate. So they may or may not even make that clear what graduation rate they're sharing. Even a lot of college search websites are sharing the 6-year graduation rate. Right? I'm a parent. You guys are parents. I'm personally not interested in the 6-year graduation rate. I want the 4-year graduation rate because I want to make sure that my child's graduating in 4 years, because if they're graduating in 5 years or they're graduating in 6 years, that means 2 more years of costs. And even worse, those 2 years of costs are not going to have merit scholarships against them. So those are going to be full cost years. So I would definitely pay attention to a 4-year graduation rate. And if it's on the low side, I would be asking the college, you know, why. There might be colleges with very valid reasons why their 4-year graduation rate is not as high as they would want it to be. And I'll give you 2 quick examples. One, this isn't why I use the example, but I tend to go back to, so Drexel or Northeastern, a school that has a lot of co-ops. Those students are graduating in 5 years or 6 years because they're adding in co-ops, but they're doing 4 years worth of schoolwork. So even though they're graduating 5 or 6 years, you're paying for 4 years of going to school. So that's a valid reason why those schools' 4-year graduation rates are not as high. In fact, I'm pretty sure if you went to Northeastern, they don't even have a 4-year graduation rate because it's probably on the low side and they don't want to be scrutinized because for why it's so low. So that's a reason. That's a valid, good reason why it's on the low side. Another reason is some of the state schools in California have low 4-year graduation rates, and that's because students haven't been able to graduate in 4 years because they haven't been able to satisfy requirements. And that is due to budget issues of classes not being offered frequently enough for students to actually finish their majors. So that's like a not so good reason why the 4-year graduation rate is on the low side. All I'm saying is when you see something that doesn't make sense or is not kind of where you think it should be, ask these are the perfect questions. Again, your student can start to ask the admissions office, why is your graduation rate X? And, another school that's very similar has a much better 4-year graduation rate. Okay. We have the information about the test optional. So this is the only information that we have been updating more frequently. And particularly, we actually have to do an update because a lot of schools have now decided that they're going to be test optional for this next 2022 admission season. So that information we're updating more frequently and will be updated before the summer. Okay, then we have the columns related to average SAT, average ACT, 75th percentile SAT, 75th percentile SAT, ACT. Again, for whatever reason, a lot of other search sites don't give you the actual 75th percentile. But here you can filter by it, you can sort by it. So remember, I didn't use a test score for this filter, but this is how now I would look at these results and I would sort these columns. I would sort these columns, I would sort the GPA column. To see, did I pass GPA by? Oh, here, yeah, I did. GPA. So I would sort the GPA column. Let's do it the other way to see, what these average GPAs are for these schools. If I didn't have a test score for my students, I would do. If I had a test score, I would do the same thing. For these 75th percentile columns. For the ACT and the SAT. So, and then, I would kind of look across and compare the, the test scores in the GPA. So let me you can see here, like Northwestern is not sharing a GPA. And it's not purposeful. Maybe they just don't feel like they have a good enough handle on what the average GPA is to share publicly. Let me say one other thing, that sometimes some of these numbers like really don't make sense. And you're like, oh, it has to be a mistake. And sometimes it actually is a mistake. I had a woman email me, I think it was for Cornell College, and the numbers were just really like off. You could just tell that they just didn't make sense. And so we looked up the actual common data set, because that's where a lot of this, particularly the GPA and the ACT and the SAT scores come from. And the common data set had the exact numbers that we had. So what that then tells me is that the school made a mistake. We actually reached out to Cornell College. I don't think that they ever responded, unfortunately. But that school, reported the wrong information. That's unfortunately at that point, that's all we can go by. But if you come across that, email me, say this doesn't make sense. We will double check. And, if we can get better numbers, we'll try and we'll update it. Okay. So there's a whole section here on admission rates. And we break out the admission rate into, if a school is doing early decision or early action, we break out the numbers. So a lot of times you will see admission rates quoted, and whatever it could say 25% of students are accepted, and that's all students. That's students who applied early and students who applied regular. But I personally think it's important to know all the breakout of the numbers. And so let's look at an example. So okay, yeah, let's look at Harvey Mudd. So or actually even better, these are like some selective schools. This is what's just filtered to the top. I'm not purposely picking the selective schools, but so Harvey Mudd says that their overall admission rate is close to 14%, but they have early decision. And early decision, if you just looked at the students who got an early decision, they are getting it at a higher rate. They're getting in at close to 19.5%, 20%. And then students that are applying regular decision are getting in a little lower rate, closer to the 13%. And then another important thing to look at is how many students is that school actually accepting early. In this case, or Harvey Mudd is accepting about 38%, about 40% of their class early decision. So that means there's a lot fewer spots regular decision. If you just scan down that list, particularly the more selective schools, look at Tufts. Tufts takes, or at least they took last year, 60% of their class they take early decision. So if your student is not applying early decision, and there might be good reasons why, I mean, you have to actually make a very sound decision if you're going to let your student apply early decision. There's only going to be 40% of the class left to be filled in regular decision. So, and these are important things to pay attention to. This probably relates a lot more to the more selective schools where they do rely very heavily on early decision. But there might be some schools here that you see from an early action standpoint that are also taking a lot of their, or at least accepting students, early action as well. Okay, moving on. So now the two other big sections left are what I would call, it's a section for need-based aid and then merit aid. So a really quick and dirty way of just kind of seeing where you fall, if potentially your family might be eligible for need, is you would take your EFC, and that's like a whole nother presentation on your EFC, how you calculate it, what it means, all that type of stuff. But let's just assume you know your EFC. If you know your EFC, and I'm going to take a number, let's say your EFC is 30,000. What you do is you compare your EFC. I'm going to scroll a little further. You compare it to the total, the cost of attendance at that school. So you can see these columns. We have in-state cost of attendance, out-of-state cost of attendance. For private schools, that number is going to be the same. It's only for state schools where obviously in-state cost of attendance is different than out-of-state. So let's stick with Harvey Mudd. If the family's EFC is 30,000, Harvey Mudd, crazy as it is saying that their cost of attendance is, let's just round it up, or round it down, $79,000 or $80,000. So that means the difference, right, is $50,000. That is my need. So for this school, because my EFC is less than the cost of attendance, I would have, in theory, a financial need at that school. What I would then do is I would scroll back and say, what percentage of that need is that school saying that they will actually meet? Harvey Mudd, very, very, very generous, is saying we will meet 100% of your financial need. So if my student applied to Harvey Mudd and they got in, then we should, at a minimum, expect a financial aid offer that gives us $50,000, because that would be my family's financial need. And Harvey Mudd is saying that they are meeting 100% of that. That was a really quick way of figuring out your if you're going to be eligible for need-based aid and how much you might get. These are important numbers to look at. This is how you can predict ahead of time what potentially your cost is going to be at a college. And then we also use these numbers when college offers actually come in, like for seniors now, right? They're getting a lot of college offers. And when the college offer does not match up to what they said the percentage need that they will meet, it is a clear-cut case. You should absolutely be appealing, because they didn't say what they didn't do what they said they were going to do. So we use these numbers before you apply, and we use them after you apply to see if the offer that you got is truly indeed what they said they were going to give. So we have a column, two columns. I talked about crowdsourced information. If you clicked on here, you would see the actual offer this year. Actually, this is for right now, that a student got in to California Institute of Technology, and they told us, this is crowdsourced, they told us that they received $10,000 in need-based aid. So everything in this column are offers of that students got, and they were need-based. Here, we tend to have a lot of information about Northeastern. This is, again, just from this current year, and you can also look at last year. So this year, students that have been getting in early action, early decision, based on what their EFC is, these are their need-based aid that they're being given. Okay, so then if you scroll a little further, we have the similar information for merit, related to merit scholarships. So the first column is, it says, how many freshmen attend that school and do not have any financial need? And that's the need based on the description that I just told you. So again, let's stick with Harvey Mudd. Harvey Mudd is saying 56% of their students at the school do not have a financial need. So that means they're either getting some sort of merit scholarships or they're paying full price. So this kind of gives you a sense, to tell you the truth, a little bit of the social economic distribution of the school. Let's look at UVA. UVA is saying 61% of their students, let's see, I can't highlight this at the bottom, sorry. 61% of the students at UVA do not have a financial need. So again, that means that 40% are getting some sort of need-based aid, and 60% are either getting some merit scholarships, but probably not very much because it's very low, or they're paying full price. So that's how I look at that information. The next column says, of the students who do not have a financial need, how many of those students are getting merit money? How many of those students have been offered merit scholarships? So again, let's stick with Harvey Mudd. So that's weird. I can highlight it over here. So Harvey Mudd, 46% of the students do not have a financial need. 37% of the 46% are being given some form of merit scholarship. That's actually not bad. There are other schools that are giving a much higher percentage of the students' merit scholarships, but that's not bad. And then if you continue on, then this is the average dollar amount. So they're giving out merit scholarships. They're giving it to 37% of the students who aren't eligible for need-based aid, but they're only giving out $8,000. I say only because we looked at the cost of attendance of Harvey Mudd, which was like close to $80,000. So to give like $8,000 off of $80,000 is really, not a big discount, if you want to call it that. So they're giving money, they're not giving that much. Let's scroll a little bit further down. You look at Northeastern, 58% of their students do not have financial need. They're giving 62% of those families some form of merit scholarship. Their average dollar amount is close to $20,000. That's a big difference. It's still an expensive school, but at least you're getting more in merit scholarships. And let me emphasize that this is an average. So there's going to be students who get less and students who get more. And that's all going to also relate to where your student probably sits on their strength of their academics. So, if they are in the 25th percentile, the 75th percentile, then they might get at the lower end of the merit scholarship. If they are in the like the 2 percentile, the very tippy top, they're probably going to get a higher merit scholarship amount. And again, here is the crowdsourced information. So this is right now, the students who have gotten into Northeastern, like for this admission season, these are the numbers that they're getting. So you can look at by their EFC, the first students, or with these lower EFCs, are getting need-based money and they're getting merit scholarships. So depending on, some schools will give you both. Let's kind of look a little higher. If you're in the higher EFC range, students are still getting, this second one here is from Arkansas. They had a GPA of 4.0. They have a 35. That's, very high, and they're getting $28,000 in merit scholarship. So that I kind of, you can't make like exact decisions off of this information, but it kind of either validates your hunch that your student might get merit scholarships. And a lot of people are using this information now on the appeal side to say, okay, this is what school offered my student, look at all the other students and what they're getting, is it the same or is it not? And if it's different, why is it so different? And maybe I should be appealing. So I'll just continue a little bit further along. Is information related to, if schools give you credit for APs. A lot of the schools do that now. More specific, if a school has an honors program, an honors college, that's actually another way that students can get more merit money. If a college has an honors program, you should check into what the requirements are to get into that honors program. Usually the students that are accepted into the honors college or the honors program within that school also tend to get more money just by the virtue of them being in those programs. So I would look into those details. We also have information on whether the school asks for the CSS profile or whether they ask for the non-custodial form. I'll tell you the reason why we have this information is actually a few reasons. One is it's really most helpful for families of divorce. The rules are going to change, but for this coming year, the rules are the same as they are right now. If your family is divorced, the parent who fills out the CSS profile is the parent where your student spends 51% of their time. So some families, and you should really think about this, strategically pick which parent that's going to, that the student's going to spend 51% of their time based on that parents' income and assets. So you want the parent with the lower income and assets to be filling out the financial aid forms. And then if a school only asks for the FAFSA and your family is divorced, you actually kind of have a little bit of an advantage because your student can probably get more aid in that situation. But if a school is asking for the CSS profile, they're probably asking for information from both parents, and they particularly want the non-custodial form filled out. Anyhow, these are just actually, some people, use this information to pick a school, if they're coming from a divorced family, pick a school that's only asking for FAFSA, or pick a school that might be asking for the CSS profile, but is not requiring the non-custodial form. So these are just kind of little tricks of the trade as you're navigating the system. Okay, it is 9:45. I am really sorry that I've gone on too long. I'm gonna stop sharing. I will quickly look through some of these questions. I completely, this is recorded. You can come back and look at it. I'm sorry this went so long. As you can see, there's a lot of information in here. I will definitely try and keep cutting this down. So sorry, it's kind of my nature. I kind of want you guys to know as much as I can share with you. So there's questions here about FAFSA. I'm not going to go over that because that's like a different topic. Let's see what else. Okay, somebody's asking, can you pick a specific field and download the data? Unfortunately, right now, I said that this was like version 1. Right now, we aren't allowing you to download the data. There's just, I actually, there's some issues even in the way on some of the data that's licensed. I can't allow people to download it. But we're working on a variation where you can make a smaller subset of just the fields that you're most interested in. So you don't have to look at all of this data. So that we've heard loud and clear is an improvement we're going to work on. So that should be coming out over the summer. Did you say if a merit scholarship could cover full tuition for the year? This is from Rochelle's question. There are definitely some merit scholarships that would be cover the full tuition, and they actually call them like full tuition scholarship. They aren't as prevalent as scholarships that are less than a full tuition, but it's definitely a possibility. Again, the mother who emailed me today, I was giving you an example about Miami University. The reason why she should be looking into the details, is that she really felt that her daughter was eligible for a full tuition scholarship at Miami University, and she was upset that they hadn't gotten it. So there are schools that give out full tuition scholarships. Not every school does. So that's, you got to look in the detail of the college and see if it's a possibility. So Christy's asking, for state schools, is there a difference in the percentage of need met between in-state and out-of-state schools? There usually is not. I've really never seen that. They definitely might give different merit scholarships amounts to an in-state versus an out-of-state student, but from a financial need perspective, the amount of need that they'll meet for an in-state versus an out-of-state school for need-based is usually the same. But definitely, unfortunately, I've seen a lot of state schools give their in-state students less merit money. Also, the cost of tuition for in-state student is lower, and they usually give out-of-state students more money to attract the out-of-state students, but those out-of-state students are also paying a much higher price. Okay, yeah, somebody, EFC, expected family contribution. I'm sorry, I did not go into detail about that tonight. That is like a whole nother presentation, and you know what? We usually do that presentation closer to October 1st, which is when you have to fill out the FAFSA. But you know what? I actually think that people are asking about it. It actually would be important to do that presentation now, because you should understand your EFC way before you fill out the FAFSA, and you should use it in all of the searching that we've been talking about tonight. So I'll find a time in March, and we can do a presentation on EFC. We have a member of the Paying for College 101 Facebook group that made a really amazing spreadsheet to help you calculate your EFC. There are definitely other tools online that can do it as well, but it's nice to use the spreadsheet because you can kind of play with the input, so you can see what is driving the numbers. So his name is George Schneiderman, and actually George did the part of the presentation last year, so I will get him because he's like has tremendous knowledge now about what's behind the calculations of the EFC. So somebody is asking, since the common data set is part of the College Insights tool, how often is this updated by schools? I just looked at the CDS my son is interested in, and their CDS information is from 2017. That really is out of date. Is this typical? How frequently do most schools update this information? This was from Melissa. You asked that question. I'd love to know what school that you looked at that had 2017 common data set information. I would say that a fair number of schools keep their common data set information up to date. What I would say is, if you found on the college website that it was from 2017, it doesn't mean that they haven't shared more up-to-date common data set information to the other sources that collect it. It may be that they just didn't put more recent links on their website. It could also be that they haven't updated to 2017. That's kind of unusual. It's to the advantage of most colleges to update their common data set information because it is used for ranking. So they want to have, the most updated information. So I would tell me what school it is if you want to email me or put it in the chat. And I would call the school and ask them, why they don't have more up-to-date information. But most schools are actually pretty good, and they're trying to get out up-to-date information. Okay, I'm going to call it a night. There are definitely more questions here. I'll go through them and see if there are any more questions I can answer when I send out a follow-up email. I will send out that email, which will have a link to the presentation or the recording from tonight. I'll answer some of these questions. I'll give you the other links from those tables that I showed you, the conversion tables, and I'll just also include some tips that we've shared with other families on how to use the tool. Any questions, feel free to send me an email. I try and get back to, as many of them as I can. And I wish everybody luck. This is probably not going to be the last time we'll see each other. But, what the best thing I will say is to just keep sharing information that you learn in the Paying for College 101 group, ask questions, because I think where we learn the most is actually from each other. I mean, I continually learn every day from people putting information into that group, because I can't have my eyes and ears on everything. And so there's going to be something that somebody else has learned that's interesting and is worthwhile and kind of makes you think, oh, I should be asking the colleges that my child is interested in about that. So please just keep sharing, keep asking questions. I think it will help us all improve, and hopefully we will get to a better place with this process soon in the next few years. I really do see improvements coming. Okay. Good night, everybody. Take care.